Okay, got it. Good evening and welcome. I'm Nathaniel Welch, co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7:02 p.m., our first meeting of the year. Today's agenda was posted on the committee's page on the town website. And as you probably saw, the meeting is being recorded. This meeting is held under the authority of the executive order in force until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions, which suspend certain provisions of the open meeting law. All votes will be taken by roll call vote. And if you haven't already done so in Zoom, please identify yourself on the screen. You do this by clicking on the three dots at the top of the box that has your picture in it, and click on the rename feature, and your name will be up there. I'm also going to request that everyone mute their microphones to limit background noise. And in the event of any technical difficulties, if the Zoom becomes unavailable and we can't recover within 5 minutes, this meeting will be ended, and all matters in the agenda will be passed to the next Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee meeting. As you'll note in the agenda, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. Please raise your hand at the time, and we will call on you, ask you to identify yourself by name and address. And please, if you can, limit your comments to 1 or 2 minutes. And thank you all for your patience and understanding. The minutes for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member Adrian Boardman. Adrian, thank you again, as always. And at this time, I'll ask committee members to indicate that they are present when I call their name. Richard Follander.
Here.
Deborah Edelman.
Here.
Adrian Boardman.
Here.
Dorcas Miller.
Dorcas.
Here. Okay. Oh, Dorcas, you're here. Good. Okay. Sam Stearns.
Present.
You're present. Thank you, Sam. Tracy Hanson.
Here.
And myself, I am here. 8 of the 9 members are present. John Soden is feeling ill today, or he had tooth work done, so he will not be joining us. But with 8 members, we have a quorum of the committee. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the December meeting. Are there any edits to the minutes? They were sent out to the members. Any edits to the minutes the committee members want to suggest for the December 2nd meeting?
I have one, but I'm trying to find it now. It was a reference to the adjacent parcel to the east. And I wasn't clear if that was the MBTA parcel we're talking about or what. If I just can't find it in the minutes right now. I'm looking at it on my screen. So
right. The adjacent parcel, I think, referred to the piece of property, or the parcel that sits between the right of way and the shopping center. Probably
okay.
It's probably more to the north than to the east, but
all right. Thank you.
okay. Is there any change you think we need to make?
No.
Okay. Any other committee member have comments? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Edelman?
Approve.
Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Mr. Follander?
Approve.
Ms. Hanson?
Approve.
Ms. Miller?
Approved.
Mr. Stearns?
Approved.
And I approve also. So vote is the minutes are approved. At this point on the agenda, we have listed Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, who would be around to normally provide her update. Right now, Marcia is tied up with the vaccinations at the school. She should be here at some point. So if the committee is okay, I'd like to bump the town update to when she shows up. Any objections to doing that? Okay. Next, the first item on the committee's business is e-bikes. And just by way of introduction, this is the first meeting that we'll be discussing e-bikes. Eventually, the committee will probably need to propose a policy on e-bikes to the town, as part of our charge, to suggest policies for the trail. Today, we want to get some background on the topic and have an initial discussion. Debbie drafted an informational white paper that I shared back with the committee, and it is either posted or will be posted to the website. And Deb, I think I should probably bring up a copy of it. Richard, do you have a copy?
You can pull up the copy in the chat,
Okay.
and then people can pull it down. But more importantly, can you share the slides? And then I'll just tell you when to move forward. I sent those to you earlier.
You did send it to me. Hold on. And I just need to, do you want to do some introductory remarks while I'm getting this
Sure,
ready?
absolutely. I'll start this off. So I know Marcia's not here right now, but this, if she was here, what I would say is she was indispensable in this effort because she has so much historic knowledge. It seems like about everything, but in particular about things that impact the rail trail. So this started by me essentially interviewing her. I guess it was about 2 months ago. And through that interview and discussion, that allowed me to frame out what are the issues? Where have we been? Where are we now? Where we're going? What are the issues? And so she does have some really strong thoughts about this topic. So I just really wanted to give that as my introductory comment.
Okay.
The second thing that, and so let me just see, are
Almost
you?
keep going. No, keep going. Almost ready.
Okay. Okay, good. The second thing that I would say is, I thought we could do like an informal poll. If everybody wants to just use the hand up feature, how many of you have an e-bike?
Hard to tell.
If you just put your hand up, then we can start counting. But doesn't look like. Let me just see if anybody does. Yeah, nobody's putting anybody of the public. Are the public allowed to raise their hand if they have an e-bike, or they're not?
They should be able to. Yes, they should be able to. Okay.
Okay, so it's interesting. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand that they have an e-bike. I mean, it's a small sample, but so that is very interesting. So I think
anybody, I've ridden an e-bike.
Okay, has anybody ridden? There you go. Has anybody
ridden an e-bike, perhaps?
Okay, let's see if we get some more hands.
I think we need to get e-bikes so we can all ride them.
Yes,
it's research, right?
Thank you. There we go. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing the slides.
Sorry, it took me so long.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so even though our little sample, suggests that who cares? The truth is that this is really an important issue. And as the slide suggests, more and more people are using e-bikes. That means it will directly impact the rail trail. And instead of sort of waiting until it hits us in the face, I appreciate the leadership of the committee chairpersons, because they said, you know what, let's just open the dialogue. And it's possible as we do that the future will meet us today. The only other comment, and you can go to slide 3, because I'm obviously looking at my own slides. Yeah, if you want to just scroll ahead, perfect, that slide. So what's really interesting about e-bikes is that at first I didn't realize that they were e-bikes. If I was on a rail trailer, I'm just riding anywhere. And then all of a sudden, as I look closer, I realized that they were different. And it's essentially a battery pack. And that brought me back, and I shared this with Marcia. So when I was a little girl, and I won't tell you what year it was, but I was really little. And I've been biking since, basically I learned how to walk, and then I got a bike. So I've been biking a long time. And my mom used to let me hang out with my best friend in Framingham. And there was this little boy. So it was me, my friend Debbie, and this little boy. And one day, we were always on bikes. And he rides over to us and he was going kind of fast. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. He had an e-bike, but they didn't call it that. And anybody here, I don't know if anybody knows what they called it. This would be in the 60s. Anybody know what they called an e-bike back then?
No.
They called it a motobicane. So in the mid 60s, there were electronic bikes that had a very large battery pack that didn't last a very long time. And they were relatively heavy, but they did put them on children's bikes. And so this little boy that my mother knowingly or without knowing let us hang out with, he had one, we got to ride it. And anyway, we never saw him again after my mother found out that he was riding this thing, called a motobicane. So they've been around a long time, but what's really different today is that it's very challenging to notice the difference. And so the purpose of this slide is for you to understand what is an e-bike and what is it not. And at the bottom, there's one thing to keep in mind, and it may seem obvious, but bikes have pedals. And so if you see somebody that's on some sort of a device, maybe it even has two wheels, but it doesn't have pedals, that's not an e-bike. And that's important because when we talk about the impact to the rail trail, one of the things we have to think about is what are we talking about? And arguably today's conversation is teeing it up for just e-bikes. We're not talking about people on one wheel. We're not talking about other types of scooters and whatnot. And so right now we're living in a world where e-bikes are fully 10% of total bike sales. Their growth is quite dramatic. The prices have plummeted. The batteries are, the charge time is increasing dramatically. And so just like we've seen in my world, in the technology world, where everybody stores data in the cloud, it's cheap, everybody can get a computer, that's what happened to e-bikes. They're available, they're easy to use, they're less expensive, and most importantly, they increase the ability for people who have different abilities to get on a rail trail. So it's actually very, very exciting. Let's go to the next slide. This is where it gets really messy. So, and if Marsha were here, she probably would jump in and help me out, but let me just give you a brief overview. We could spend like an hour on this. So at the federal level, the Consumer Product Safety Commission basically says what an e-bike is, but it doesn't say, for example, thou shalt never use it on a rail trail. It just says, what is it? And that's kind of helpful. You can see the three different areas, but the upshot of that is every state, and we've seen this with other aspects of our government in the United States, because of the way we're structured, states go their own way. And that's what's happened. So you have one overarching concept at the federal level, which essentially just leads to things like, do you need to get it registered and things like that? But it doesn't speak to, how do you use it and so on. Then all the states have the opportunity to fill in the gaps. And that's what happened. You have over 40 states that generally are following these classifications that you see here, 20 miles per hour with a pedal, or 20 miles per hour without a pedal, and then 28. So there's 3 classes. And I didn't write 1, 2, 3, I should have, but that third class, 28 miles per hour, just remember that. Many of the states forbid a 28 mile per hour bike from going on a rail trail. And all of this to say, an e-bike from going on a rail trail. I don't know how many of you are recreational riders. I'm sure we all are in some capacity. It is not uncommon for a bike to go 20 miles an hour without even sneezing. You're going 20. That's not a big deal. 28 is very fast. 20 is really not a big deal. And in fact, regular bikes do that all the time. What is very important about this is that in Massachusetts, as we'll show in the next slide, you can actually go ahead if you want, Nate. We're kind of behind. We don't have legislation, so there's draft legislation. If you look at the neighboring states, they have adopted this 3-tier system that we just talked about, but we're kind of behind the 8 ball. It's possible in this session, again, Marsha, if she were here, may have some comments. I didn't Google tonight. I Googled it a week ago. There was no update. Obviously, COVID slows things down. But we're in a situation where we can't point to a law and say, oh, well, the law says you can have an e-bike on a rail trail like this. All we can do is we can look at what other states have done. We can look to other jurisdictions, other countries. Interestingly, the Cape Cod Rail Trail has had a little bit to say about it, which is helpful. And I think the most important thing is if you did canvass all 40 something states, most of them say you can't have the category 3, which is the 28 mile per hour, and you can go to the next slide, which really leads to this, I think one of the big things, and we may want to camp out here for a minute. I'm going to share just a personal story with you because I think it might be helpful. When I first learned about e-bikes, I'm going to be very blunt. My first thought is, well, they don't belong on a rail trail. Rail trail is only for people getting exercise, and this is before I moved to Concord. I don't feel that way anymore. And there are a lot of reasons. Everybody should have access to a rail trail, including people who are on e-bikes. And what happened, I think, with the kind of light bulb went off for me is I was visiting the Trails Inn Cafe. I just had a really nice bike ride. And this couple stopped and they were on bikes. And I noticed they had, I didn't know what you called it yet. I noticed they had a battery pack. And I said, oh, I see you have a bike with a battery. Tell me about it. I said, oh, these are e-bikes. This was back in May. And I said, well, why do you do that? And they said, well, we're both older in our years. We love being outside. But due to knee issues and other concerns of our doctor, we can't ride a bike, but we're allowed to ride an e-bike. And we're thrilled. We love this area. You have the rail trail. Then the light bulb went off. And so I think we have to, like so many things that we're talking about, we have to think about what are the challenges? What are we afraid of? And what are guardrails? But of course, mostly, and you'll see on the next slide, you don't have to go there yet. What's our job? And like many of the new members tonight, I'm new too. And that's what I really want to talk about is what are the challenges? What are our fears? And then what do we do about it? So maybe Nate, we can just stop here before we get to this next slide and just open it up and ask questions. Do people have fears or stories like I shared that they want to bring up right now?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question if I could.
Yeah.
So on one slide, I thought I saw that an e-bike doesn't have or should have pedals. And then somewhere else, I thought I saw that it conflicted with it. And I just wanted to understand, do they always have pedals? It is always possible to pedal if someone wants to.
Yeah, so yeah, and I understand what you're thinking about. So to be classified as an e-bike, it has to physically have pedals. Then you have these 3 different classifications, and it's mostly by miles per hour. There's 2 with 20 and then 1 with 28, where I think you're thinking is in the category 2, what that means is you could ride 20 miles per hour, even if you're not pedaling. So the pedals won't be moving, but you're just going.
Okay.
But if it doesn't have a pedal, it's not an e-bike.
Got it.
Good
Okay.
question.
Yeah,
That's a scooter? Right, go ahead.
Does the class 2 e-bike have a throttle? Because I know the class 3 do. In order to maintain speed without pedaling, in other words.
Yes, I believe it does. I know I have that comment in the white paper, which we can pull up later. But I think throttle is power, so I think it won't work unless you do. But we can look that up. That's something we can look more into if we have to.
The committee member,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, thanks for providing this overview. I haven't personally known enough about this topic before to be able to have a strong opinion one way or another. So the information you presented today is helping kind of frame my reference and my thoughts on this. One question that I have, in any of like your research or talking with Marcia, do you have any indication how states that do not allow these on rail trails have any type of enforcement mechanisms? I know we've talked about that in the past, like, if we had a speed limit on the rail trail, who is really going to enforce that? So I'm curious, when you talk about the different classes and, understanding the distinctions between them for states that have come out with strong regulations, do you know or have any visibility how they're enforced? I'm curious.
That's a great question. I think my answer is going to be no, that I haven't seen enforcement. I'm going to conjecture
Mhm.
that it's at the local level, with the exception of the National Park Service. I think they would be the best place because they're the ones that started the classification system. And so they likely have enforcement and they probably have data, which is, I always end up talking about data, but I think that's where this is going to end up. So I think that's a really important question. Where can we get information about enforcement and who does it?
Mhm.
So just a point of the process, Deborah, as we generate these questions, do you feel okay kind of taking them on as additional work to help us as a committee answer the questions we need to know and get educated on it? Are you okay with kind of continuing this work on the e-bikes?
I'm absolutely, I think the what, I'll just need clarification. What does that mean? Whatever
what is
we
it?
decide,
Right,
the
right.
next step, so we'll figure it out. But yeah, like
All
for
right,
example,
okay.
we have two questions, is there a throttle? And then, where can we get
Enforcement, enforcement.
Yeah.
Other committee member questions? Because then I see a hand up in the public.
I will, since I did ride an e-bike once, I'll let you know that I think it was a class 3 and it really goes fast. I mean, I feel like, you need a license virtually to put it on the road. Because and the pickup, I know that's true with electric vehicles. The pickup is pretty, boom, you move really fast.
Yeah.
So I think one of the questions about enforcement, and I think in the paper, is we are part of a trail that runs from Lowell to Framingham eventually. And so I think part of our work is going to be, how do we collaborate on policy setting and enforcement with the other towns on here? I don't, we don't have to have an answer today, but I think that's a part of it. And that leads me to actually open this up to Barbara Pike, who represents the Friends of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Barbara, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I have seen quite a few people on e-bikes on the rail trail, and you wouldn't necessarily know that they were. E-bikes can either have a removable battery pack, which means you can leave your bike in the garage and charge it indoors, or it can have an internal battery pack, which makes it pretty hard to tell what it is. And these people are not going anywhere near 20 miles an hour. One clarification on the category 1 is it's pedal assist. That means if you don't pedal, you aren't going.
That's right.
But it really helps some people get uphill, mostly, I would
That's
say.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
That's good. I thought one interesting thing in your paper, Debbie, was the data that you picked up from, I think, was it Tennessee, that said that, University of Tennessee, that said that they rode slightly faster when riding on the road, e-bike riders did, but actually slower than regular bike riders when on a bicycle path. So I thought that was a really interesting piece of research that, because I think one of the concerns all of us have, or fears, is these folks are going to be whipping around us, and that's going to create a safety issue. So I thought that piece of data was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it really speaks to the fears that, that we have. And I always go back to the horse and buggy, and, when people first saw those crazy things, I don't know if they called them autos or horseless carriages.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they thought that they were going to kill everybody.
Mary Beth.
My experience with e-bikes are that I spend a lot of time in Madison, Wisconsin, and they have e-bike share there. And also Madison is just filled with bike trails everywhere, bike trails, trails that run along the river and the lakes, trails that run, that are part of the street, that are a lane on the street. And everyone is riding e-bikes. And I have not had any experience of people riding them any faster or endangering. I'm sure there are the occasional nutcases who run, who do ride too fast the same way that they might ride a non-electric bike too fast. But being around lots of them. And as a pedestrian, usually when I'm in Wisconsin and I'm using the bike trails, I'm not on a bike, I'm using my wheelchair because I don't have my bike in Wisconsin. I'm using a wheelchair. And so I'm going slower than a lot of these bikes and even slower than the regular bikes, not just the e-bikes. And it looks like it works out pretty well. I know people in Wisconsin who are really embedded in the bike community there. One guy I know actually works for a place that bakes bikes. So I'm happy to kind of inquire about how they, whether or not there are any regulations, how do they do it, what is, maybe I haven't noticed any problems, but is there a history of problems and complaints? So I could check in with both the bike community there and the disability community there to see what has their experience been with e-bikes. Has it been relatively, smooth, or have there been problems?
And
Thank you,
Mary
Beth.
Beth, what is your last name? I don't know. If I have
Barker.
that.
It's
Barker.
Mary Beth. It's Barker.
She's
B-A-R.
our newest committee member. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And a representative from the
Yeah.
DOC.
Right.
Which is good.
You did it. You missed me on the roll call, so I think it confused
Okay.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the interest of time, Deborah, do you want to wrap up your presentation?
Yeah, so if you want to, yep, there you go. Essentially, there were two slides at the end. These are the questions to consider. And then the very last slide is really just this sort of straw model. And I use the word very loosely, kind of like we were dealing with the junction, what do we do? How do we find out what our role is? What does this look like? So these last two slides, in the interest of time, I don't know if we want to continue discussing today or if this is where we carry it forward to another meeting.
Yeah, I mean, unless committee members feel differently, I think we've gotten a really good introduction. I thought the paper was excellent. I think to your question, so what are the next steps? It feels like the straw man is an outline for that. Do you want to just say what you think and then?
Sure. And Marcia's not here yet, right? Is she?
Nope. Oh, yes, she is. There she is.
There she is, Marcia.
Yay, Marcia.
Perfect timing. We planned it this way, Marcia.
Well, I'm not quite ready yet, so, if there's something else you can do while I
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Don't worry.
That's great.
It'll be good.
So basically, if we ask the question, how can we be helpful to the community, and what should we be doing given our charge? These steps provide that outline. Arguably tonight is almost 1A. It's not the first meeting because there's other items on the agenda. So arguably we would have potentially, a standalone meeting that we would discuss this. We could bring in, guest speakers. I think one of the things Marcia and I talked about is who are those people, whether they're from Massachusetts or some of the surrounding areas. There could be several. So that's number one. Then number two, once we have that information, we get data. We've started congealing what, enforcement, what do we need? Technology, what do we need? Then we have a second meeting and we bring in some of these groups that can speak to enforcement, that can speak to dealing with other communities. Then the third meeting is you bring in the community. And maybe at that point, we even have a straw model and we get straw man and we get the community engaged. So that's really what the purpose of this slide is.
Okay. Committee member comments? As co-chair, I think this is a great layout for next steps. Like, what if for the next meeting, Debbie, you put together a kind of a more detailed plan with some times and so on. In other words, what months do we want to do what, and who might you have in there, and then bring it back to the committee for us to kind of say, yep, this is our approach, and also think about when we might want to come up with a recommendation. This is a hot topic. I remember from a prior meeting, Mr. Coutre was really passionate about the topic. And I feel there are going to be other people in the community who are. So, having this opportunity to both educate ourselves and the community, and then think about what is it we're trying to accomplish. And then, as you suggest in the third meeting, have the community kind of respond to a straw person approach, I think would be, makes sense to me. I don't know, Richard, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I think we talked about having a meeting, pulling together folks from the adjoining towns and in some kind of effort, rail trail folks. I think that this topic would be a clear opportunity to do that. Find out what, maybe Chelmsford posts something about e-bikes, I don't know, or Westford or somebody. So I think this would be a great opportunity as part of this process to involve. That would be a good topic if we want to get together with other towns.
Well,
Do we already do that, or are we planning this meeting with it?
Yeah, there's some discussion about having a meeting of all of the towns. We have to think about kind of the workload given our Junction Park requirement, but it's been a while since the Friends of the Freeman Rail Trail actually brought together all of the towns that are on it, and this feels like a good year to do it. But in the interim, part of the research process could be to talk to people in the other towns and find out what they're doing to kind of move our thinking forward on this.
Okay.
So does that sound like? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and that's where I'll get with Marcia, and she'll be very helpful.
Yeah, and Barbara Pike will know other contact people from the Friends in each community as well.
Okay, great.
Great. Deb, thank you so much for putting this together. I think we have a plan for our next session. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to relinquish the screen. Stop the sharing for now. Stop the sharing. Marcia, we had pushed off your memo update until you returned. Do you want a little more time? And should we talk about Junction Park, and then we can do your memo, and then I assume there are going to be some fence questions.
Whatever you like. I have my memo. So if you want me to get started on that, I can. But if you'd like to proceed with Junction Park, that too is fine.
Okay, so I think let's do Junction Park, and then I think your memo will probably lead into a good conversation about the last half mile, which I think is our other talk. That's okay. That means you can go get a drink between now and then. Water. Yes, exactly. Water. Okay. Junction Park discussion. As a reminder, our deliverables are a written recommendation to the select board of a conceptual redesign of Junction Park to ensure the safety and separation of the users of the trail. It includes a recommendation also for a short-term proposal that augments signage and helps address increased ridership due to the completion of the Route 2 bridge in July of this year. The timing is that we need to deliver a recommendation to the select board no later than June 30th, 2022, earlier if possible. So tonight, I thought we'd talk about the design principles. We've gotten some feedback from the committee members. I've consolidated some feedback from the committee members on the design principles. And then I think we also want to set some dates with regard to when we're going to do a kind of a solutions ideas meeting for both the long-term conceptual redesign and the short-term post-bridge opening period. I just want to say that the Omicron variant has caused us and others a lot of issues and continues to impact us. This meeting was supposed to be face-to-face when we first thought about it. It's also thrown a wrench into the planning for a larger public gathering to discuss Junction Park. So I just want people to be aware of that, because I think some, I've heard that some people are concerned that we're moving too slowly in the process, and the committee, we all understand the criticality of the issue and the need to get both the short-term and the long-term conceptual redesign completed. And I also think that at the same time, it's sometimes good to slow down in order to speed up later on. So our committee will be deliberate and thoughtful in this process, and hopefully will help us avoid any mistakes or issues. So I'm going to share any comments from the committee. Okay, so I want to share the principles piece. If I can find it here. Hold on. Oh, do you have those, Marcia? Okay, I got them. Hold on. Let me just bring it up here. Okay, got it. And back here. Sorry for the slowness, guys. So these were the principles that we had discussed last time. And I asked committee members to send to me their weightings of the principles, and I do have those results somewhere. I just have to find them. There we go. So this is N equals six members who've responded, and I've just sorted them by the average weighting. And again, the weighting that we had done was out of 100, allocate 100 points across these principles, and then figure out what and then I took the average of the responses. So based on the committee, the 6 members who shared their thinking, balancing the need for safety with the need to keep the park aesthetically pleasing, inclusive, and welcoming was the highest. Second, in terms of importance, was in concert with all stakeholders considering changes to the current park layout, including landscaping, location of the paths, benches, etc., that will meet the goal of safety and separation. Close behind that was meeting the needs of the 3 types of users. Also including recommendations for areas surrounding Junction Park, then a collaborative process, and so on. I don't have to read through the rest of it, but just to get a sense of that. These principles would be used to help us kind of judge, if you will, and guide our discussions, and what the public comments are, etc. Thoughts, comments on this? Does this feel right to folks?
I guess my initial comment is that the idea of expanding into the adjacent parcel, meaning the parking lot, is significantly lower than trying to work with what we have.
That was the collective thinking of the committee.
Yeah,
of N equals 6. Yeah.
And I think that's, that doesn't preclude that, but I
Does
think
not, right.
The priority is to work with what we have.
Other thoughts from the members?
To me, the most important is the first and the third which is what we came up with first last time.
Yep.
Making sure we balance safety and keeping the park attractive, and then making sure we meet the needs of all that will use it. And then to me, all of the others are basically how we go about doing that. So it all works in my mind, but that's how I see it.
And that reminds me, Tracy, you had started to draft a survey based on our conversation last time about the needs that people have. And so this I think dovetails with that very nicely, with understanding what people feel their needs are and how they use the park, and how they feel.
And Tracy, to your point, I think I see a lot of these as being very interconnected. Like the first 2 here could almost be like merged together in some way, because I think a lot of the things that are described in the second are part of keeping the park aesthetically pleasing while also making sure it's safe. So I think it's logical how some of these things I think have equal weight, because I at least interpreted them to mean somewhat similar things. So it's nice to see that that was at least consistent throughout how we weighted it, that like things ended up together.
Sam or Mary Beth, any
I'll make one other comment also. I think the signifiers, rating is to me, when I filled it out, at least, I mean, that's the 16th, the second one really includes the signifiers because it mentions signage. I mean,
I think you're right.
That's
Yeah.
part of it. So
Yeah.
I don't think that number suggests that that's not an important element.
People didn't waste their vote on signifiers. So,
No, I might have wasted some of it.
Sam, you were going to say something?
Just overall, it resonates with me in terms of the results here.
Okay. And Mary Beth?
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think it accurately reflects the discussion that we had that day and puts it, I had a hard time rating things because they all felt so related to each other. But so it's interesting to look at the results.
Yeah.
And I feel fine about it. I think
Okay.
it's a good approach. Yeah.
Okay, so this will be a guide. Any comments from outside the committee? Trying to keep my open here. Any other thoughts? Does our select board representative liaison have anything he wants to add?
No, I think that this is a good summary, and I'm just interested in seeing how this then shapes the result, the proposal.
Okay, great. All right, so the next step where the rubber meets the road is us actually holding the first session, and with Omicron and the town meetings and some of the special votes, it looks like the week of February 7th is probably the first week that we can actually hold something. And so we were looking Tuesday to Thursday and doing something in the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, so that other meetings wouldn't be disrupted and anybody who wanted to attend could attend. The thinking is we would, and Marcy, correct me please if I'm off, we would use the hearing room in the townhouse, which is large, also has electronic capability. So if people felt uncomfortable being in public, they would still be able to participate. And Marcia, do we have any dates? Do you know of any open dates?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get that information today, so
Okay.
I don't yet.
Are the committee members okay if we found Tuesday through Thursday of that week?
I think we have a meeting scheduled for that Thursday, the 10th.
The Thursday the 10th, that's right, we do. That's
That got
correct.
moved to the 3rd.
Oh, that's right, yes, because we moved our meeting. Thank you, Richard, for reminding me. So the
Yeah.
question would be, yep, go ahead.
What's the goal of the meeting that we're talking about?
Good question. This would be the first solutions meeting, a chance for everyone to come together and offer up ideas for what we might do in Junction Park in terms of conceptual redesign. The thought was that we would have an opportunity for people to both send in their ideas and we could post them. Maybe we'd have a form that said kind of, what's your idea? I'm not sure all of the questions, how does it meet the goals of conceptual redesign? What are the challenges and so on? But let people kind of fill things in, send them in, and then we would have those available in addition to full open public comment. Thinking being, we give a person a chance to present an idea. We talk through it a bit. We'd capture the information and come out of that meeting with a set of ideas that we could start to think about and play with before the next meeting. And then between the first meeting and the second, we'd start to do some sharpening of the ideas and then come back and say, well, here's what we've heard. Here's how it's evolving. And then what does the public think about?
One thing I think we'd have to be really careful about is how we position this project to the public to make sure the feedback that we're getting is within the confines of what we're looking to do. I know
Right.
through like following some work that the planning board meeting is doing. My husband's on that committee, hearing about like the redistricting of the Throw district. There's so many wonderful ideas from the public, but sometimes they're not in line with what the committee's actually being charged to do. So while
Right.
there's really good interactive conversation, it sometimes doesn't hit the mark of what's within the the purview of the committee. So all for getting lots of ideas on the table. I just think this committee has a responsibility to make sure that the public is well informed of what they're being asked to provide feedback on, so it doesn't become something more than we need it
Right.
to be. Or
No, that's a really good point.
but it's hard to do that if we'd certainly have to make it a public invite, and then how do you make sure that all the people that are opting into that invite have taken the time to inform themselves on what we're looking to do? So
Yeah.
just a thought to consider.
I heard you say that because of Omicron, we're limited to the week of February 7th. Is that because we're trying to do this in person? Like, could we consider
Yes.
having the first meeting virtually?
Yeah,
And then
I mean,
earlier?
it was based partly on timing, the Omicron piece about not being able, trying to keep people safe and thinking about getting it started when we could. And there's been, at least I've heard a lot of people express the desire to be together face to face to do the, to have this conversation, which I think is good. So that was why we chose that week.
Plus also, we need maps,
Yes.
and you have to be able to see the maps.
Right, we need maps, and I think to Adrian's point, some definition of what's the problem we're asking to come up with a solution for.
Right.
Um,
And I
so,
think that's so important. I was at the Thoreau meeting and people came to the microphone and explained how, for example, they went around and put sticky notes with their ideas that they really preferred. And they were so hurt that they felt that it was like a bait and switch, and that they really had no realization that their ideas were going to turn into what. And again, I'm not here to say I'm the new kid in town, but there was a misunderstanding. So it's very important, number one, that we're very simple. We state what the issue is, and we make it clear what the impact of the input will be.
points, yeah. So we'll need to draft a clear definition of what we're looking for and what the impact's going to be and how the process evolves. So I think that's up to probably up to one of us to draft that and then share it for appropriately open meeting law following feedback. And then we post it as a description of here's how this meeting is going to work and here's what we're looking for.
I wonder too how the timing of the survey that Tracy was working on plays into this. Like, do we want to make sure, is it ideal to have some data from that survey to come to help kick off discussion, or are we doing both of these things in parallel?
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. The goal of the survey was really just to understand who's using the park and see if our assumptions are correct. So it would be helpful to get some responses. I'm thinking we can collect surveys for as long as we need to, though.
Mm-hmm.
And they can come in as they come in. I'm just wondering, just to throw this out though, so I've run whole sales meetings remotely because we had to, and we had breakout sessions and we did brainstorming work. I mean, you can do everything remotely, and we can display maps and make sure that everything can be shown clearly. So if we did want to kick this off earlier with just some creativity, we can do it. If we feel like that's a better option than waiting a whole month. It requires a little bit more work because you can't just get out the sticky notes, but it's possible if we want to.
Yeah, I think that I agree with both. I think the survey should be ready prior to the meeting and have been available for people to, as a thought piece. And I think the survey's question, the intent of what the whole process is should be on top of the survey. We write up what it is And then
Right.
the survey about this could be helpful. And with the survey, have an attached map to the survey so that people can look at a simplified map of the area, like showing where the rail trail comes in from each end to the park. And that's all part of the survey. So it's an educative process as well as getting information. And it's a little packet that people could use prior to the meeting and during the meeting and after the meeting. But again, it's work to put that together, certainly. And I mean, I'd be one to try to help to do it, although I'm not sure. I mean, I certainly have some, input comments on the survey itself, but
Yep.
in terms of getting a map that would work and such, I'm not sure I'm the person to do that.
Well, I'm sure we could get help from Marcia with the physical map or a map that we could share.
Right, but I also know that there's ongoing COVID issues going on with the town.
Yeah. I mean, staffing is tough. Yeah. No, got that. I mean, Tracy, I think your point about Zoom is well taken. I think I'm kind of in the middle between the generation that's like totally online and totally comfortable with engaging that way, and the old fashioned let's have a breakout table over here, right?
Why don't we get rid of your screen?
Person,
hey, Matt, can we get rid of your screen
yeah.
sharing?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, it's always,
So if someone is good at doing that, I mean, I think we could come up with a way to think through a virtual process, right? I do know that there are a couple of big dates coming up that the town has things happening.
Town
And I
meeting
don't,
coming up. Yeah.
I don't happen to have them on my calendar in front of me, but I think the week of the 20th. The 20th is right.
Yeah, January 20th is the special town meeting.
Special town meeting. And then isn't there something else also?
Well, there is a townwide vote on February 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah, an election.
oh, maybe
Okay.
we could have people, I'll volunteer myself, maybe for February 3rd, we're standing outside with a poster or something, trying to grow awareness about the topic and get people to fill out the survey.
And a QR code. I mean, you know how to do QR codes, right, Tracy? Because I don't.
Particularly at the West Concord polling place, which I assume is the school. It's Harvey Wheeler. Yeah, that's why we had to move our meeting, was because of the election.
Okay.
That's a good idea. I'd be willing to help do that.
Okay. Well, it sounds like maybe the timing then is perfect for February 7th. Anyway, if we want to get the survey feedback and with these other things going on in the town.
And if you wanted to do flyers or posters or anything like that, we can print them off in the planning office. So
good.
if you can come up with an idea, it's relatively easy. And we have a couple of sandwich board signs that are enclosed in plastic that could be used. So we could even post it outside, and using a QR code could be useful too. So.
Has the survey been drafted, the questions yet?
Yeah, I believe I sent a copy to everybody, what Tracy sent to me. And suggested a single, no reply all, but a reply back to Tracy with any comments or thoughts. So you should have it in your mailbox. If you don't, I'll send it to you.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd like help from staff with regard to the, if we want to do some planning around setting up a meeting, and we're just trying to think about how do we design a meeting, how do we space it out, how do we set it up? What are the restrictions that if two or three of us, the magic number, sat down and said, well, let's plan this meeting. Are we required to do that planning in public? I mean, or can we just kind of do the work and then come to the committee and say, here's the work that we've come up with? So I'm just concerned about violating any open meeting laws. And I'd like some guidance from the town on our ability to do some prep for this, because I feel like Tracy and others have some really good ideas. And it would be good if we could kind of sit down and just kind of hash out a design.
And you feel you can't do that in a public session?
I guess we could. I mean, we could just have a Zoom meeting and anybody could join who wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would, that's what I would do. I think you've got a really good think tank right here
Yep.
in the committee members, and everybody is bringing some good information. So if you have a planning session about your meeting and what you want to do, I don't see why that couldn't be a public discussion. You just focus on what each person has to say, and people can listen in.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. I mean,
Matt has something he might want to add. I don't know.
All I can say is that if you have more than one person assigned to do the planning, you're effectively creating a subcommittee, and the
Got it.
subcommittee does need to work
Yeah.
in public.
Okay.
Now the decision about whether you create a subcommittee or just simply have your next meeting, if you have it between now and Feb 7th, just focus on that planning. It depends upon whether you feel like you might have a quorum issue, right? So if you create a subcommittee of 3 people, let's say, those 3 people only 2 of them have to show up and they can still meet. But you right now you need a quorum of your whole committee if you're going to make it a committee meeting. That's the only distinction.
Thank you.
got it. Got it.
Well, who
All right.
on the committee would be interested in helping plan the meeting? I think that certainly Tracy would be good, given her expertise at this point and willingness to do things.
Just
Nat's going to be
enthusiasm.
on it. We can guarantee that.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who wants to be? I guess from what I heard from Matt is that we could establish a subcommittee that's going to hold a meeting, and that way we don't have a quorum issue. If nobody
Yeah,
else,
you just need to announce that you're going to meet and post the agenda, probably one item on the agenda, and
correct.
it could be just 2 people too.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
I think we should do that.
Okay.
Anybody else who want to be on that subcommittee with Tracy and Nat
I'm happy to help out.
and
Okay.
Adrian?
Okay.
Good.
Okay. You want to
Okay.
meet like 2 weeks from now or a week from now?
I mean, I think it's good to meet next week because we're
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
trying to do stuff, but we
So
have to.
if anybody
have
has
to-
comments vis-a-vis the survey, those should be given to Tracy before that meeting, basically, as soon as possible. Maybe, by if the meeting's maybe by next Monday or something.
Well, we need to provide an appropriate amount of time to announce that we're gonna have this meeting. So
Right.
we'll do that. And Marcia, we'll look to you for guidance to make sure we're not doing anything badly. Do we need to have a vote to set up a subcommittee, or can we just say, you guys, we're going to be a subcommittee? What's the process?
I think you can just, you've assigned a subcommittee, and I don't
Okay.
think you need to vote for that. So.
Okay, Adrian's just got to capture it in the minute. So Tracy, Adrian, and myself are in the subcommittee. We will find a time to meet next week, and
It'll be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, because tomorrow town offices will be closed, but we'll get things posted.
okay.
Yeah,
So
and then you can
Is-
notify all the committee members that it's happening, and other people want to come, fine.
So,
but,
yeah, okay.
Is the meeting that we're planning, is that about the short-term solution, the long-term solution, or both?
It should be both. We're responsible for coming up with both. So I had envisioned that part of the meeting would be long-term and part of it would be on the short-term. And because we need answers for both.
Okay.
And do we want to set, I mean, we have our next formal meeting is the 10th of February. Do we want to do a public meeting on the 8th or 9th before that? It would be a couple of hours in an afternoon. And actually do the public meeting then. So we have something that's happened before our next scheduled monthly meeting.
Me. I mean,
Check your
not with
calendar.
me, other people have a lot more obligations than I do, so.
Yeah.
Nat, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? My kids just stormed into the room. So
Perfect example right there.
I'd like their input, please, on this question. No.
Yeah, what time do the kids want us to meet?
Oh, sorry, was the question about when our subcommittee meetings should meet?
No, that we're gonna figure that out. We have to, I think we just have to figure out what a date and time is next week to do it, and do it with enough of a look ahead so that we can post it. The question I had was the first public meeting, I shouldn't call it a public meeting, the solutions discussion, right? Where we kind of bring together the ideas and we talk about both the short-term and the long-term solution. We had potentially said the week of February 7th, we have a monthly committee meeting on the 10th from 7 to 8 or whatever. The question was, do we want to do this this solutions meeting on the 8th or 9th in the afternoon from 4 to 6, depending on availability of the room, so that we would come out, we would have something on the 10th to dive into.
Mm. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so February 3rd.
No, it would be February either 8th or 9th from 4 to 6 p.m. And Marcia's got to check on when the hearing room is available.
Okay, I may not be able to do the 8th, so I vote for the 9th personally.
Okay.
Others on the 9th? Assuming the room is available. And this also, I've just suddenly realized that Tracy, you had said, well, why don't we just do a Zoom meeting sooner? Right. And I'm still hooked on the physical. Yeah.
That's okay.
Richard? Okay. Richard?
That's fine. And could you tell, what day is the town election again, Matt?
February 3rd.
3rd, okay. I think that is a good time to collect some data potentially. So I think the next week makes sense. And then we're not conflicting with the town meeting the week or so before.
Okay. And we'll keep a light agenda for our meeting on the 10th, or our regular monthly meeting on the 10th, so that we can use it to kind of digest whatever we found out on the sounds like the 9th, because Tracy, you'll need to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a question about the quality of these hybrid meetings where you're doing half Zoom and half live. I've only been to a few, and I have found them very difficult. I have found the visuals difficult, the audio difficult. And what I'm concerned about is that a lot of the people who are kind of have the biggest interest in safety issues in Junction Park are people who may have hearing problems and vision problems, and that format for them may not be ideal. It could be that just the ones I've attended were not done well, I'm not sure. But in general, what is other people's experience with these hybrid meetings?
I can talk about what happens at work. I know whenever we have entirely remote meetings, they go really well because then everything can be shared. Everybody can hear, they can increase the volume. You can zoom in when you need to. I find they work really well. And then in-person meetings with no one remote work really well because then everybody can see the same thing. Although sometimes nobody thinks to put something up on the slide, and then you just can't see anything. And then the hybrid ones like you're talking about, they can be tricky because if you get people in the room that are talking amongst themselves and the person that's remote can't hear anything, and they might not be talking directly into the microphone or close enough to the computer that's picking up the sound. So we would have to think through that whenever we have in-person meetings and allow Zoom. Otherwise, anybody who is remote or quarantining and being responsible will not really be able to participate. So it's a little tough. It's we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah. One idea to address this, I've just seen this at my church. I don't know if any of you, if you go to your house of worship, your synagogue, your mosque, your church, it's very much hybrid these days. Now, obviously now many churches are fully remote, but some are still having in person, and people like me are remote. So it's a good example where it's hybrid. And so what I've seen very helpful is there's like a moderator for the Zoom, and that moderator knows everything in advance. They facilitate, they get the data, and they're like troubleshooting and everything. And so that really helps. Before we had that, it was fine, but I kind of felt like I was like an orphan, but now that we have the moderator, if there's ever any problems, they're on it. So
maybe we could have somebody in person monitoring the online world, but then also have somebody online who's in charge of the other co-host, perhaps making sure that those two are communicating so that the in-person person understands what's going on remotely.
That's what I think we'd have to make sure, is that there's enough members of the committee that would be attending in person to make sure that like the group in person was appropriately like supported and things are captured and you can troubleshoot on site, and that there's enough of us that would be remote that could do that portion of it. That's a good point, Tracy.
And then we have a quorum. I guess, yeah, that's true. It's physical
And then a combined quorum, I guess. Yeah.
And just to be clear, you're talking about the 9th. I have a conflict. If I'm the only one, go ahead without me. I can try to see if I can change that, but right now I have a conflict. But if I'm the only one, then that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, let me ask a question. I mean, I think I've pushed, I've been in my head pushing the face-to-face, because I think maybe through selective hearing, I heard a lot of people say, let's meet together so we can do stuff. I also, Tracy, I mean, I think you've reminded me that a well-run remote meeting, a well-run Zoom meeting, all online, can actually work really well. And so I just, what I want to say is I'm not hung up on face-to-face.
I do think a key aspect of is something that Dorcas has mentioned. However, a way to, when you're in a physical meeting, you have a map that people can go up to collectively and look at and understand, and and if we're doing it remotely, then how does that work effectively? If we just pull up a map, I think we just be careful in a way that allows some interactivity with the map.
Well, couldn't we make the map?
Make a comment and we can zoom in, or you could put a marker like, okay, here we need a sign, boom, we put a little marker in, or here, somehow the map becomes interactive in the same way you would have if you were, together, and somehow, and it still is, it's visible to people. And it's on this screen here, that's all you got. And in a meeting, you can have a map that's big, which gives you more opportunities to.
Could you not?
I think that would be a key factor on making it successful for folks who would prefer to be in person.
Right. I mean, you could make some of the materials available online, so someone could be like looking at it, on their screen, because they've been able to download it. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just hearing you describe that, it made me think of there's a software called Prezi where you could point to a place on the map and link it to a photo of like what's the end user experience, or different ways to facilitate that.
What it looks like on the map.
So it sounds like the meeting design subcommittee needs to talk through this and maybe come up with a recommendation. Because it may be that with Omicron and the other stuff that's happening, we should look to do the first meeting on Zoom, and then the second meeting maybe face-to-face a little while later, after we've had a chance to kind of digest stuff. I'm throwing out an idea. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it feels like that's something that the subcommittee should talk through, like a recommendation.
Okay, we can do that. Are we allowed to use other tools? Like Sam suggested one. Are we limited to just Zoom? Because
the problem is with licensing of the software, right? So the town has licenses for Zoom. I don't think they have licenses for Prezi. So then it comes back to, well, what are the terms of using that?
Right.
I guess what I'm wondering is, do we have to use this Zoom account? Because I could use my own Zoom account, which has additional features like annotating, where you could actually draw on the screen, and like anybody could draw on the screen.
Yeah, I think for a town event, we should be using the town's license. Yeah.
Okay.
And we get the fancier Zoom that Tracy has drawn.
Yeah, I don't know the background on that. I suspect that for the kind of licenses that the town has, there's like extra costs for
Right.
doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But Tracy, with the subcommittee group, I can, we can talk about things and I can invite our public information officer, Erin Stevens, to join us. She might have additional resources. Chris Carmody is in the town manager's office. He is our Zoom guru. So there may be some opportunities here that we can discuss further.
Okay, that sounds great, Marcia. Thank you. I don't want to put the enhanced Zoom on the consent calendar, Matt, so don't don't worry.
So are we on for the 9th? Is that the Deborah's probably can't make it, but otherwise on?
It's tentative depending on whether the townhouse is available.
Okay.
Or well, I guess not. If it goes Zoom, then
If we go all Zoom, then it might be. So I think we need to come up with that next week when we meet.
I mean, I think if it's available, let's book it, and for now, because and maybe things will be way different a month from now.
Okay, that's probably a good idea. Put a reservation in for it.
And then as for the subcommittee, would next Thursday work for people at 7?
Can we do a little earlier in the day?
Not on a Thursday.
Not on Thursday.
Yeah.
Not a Thursday, okay.
Maybe Friday afternoon. That was an option.
Friday afternoon, I'll be traveling.
Okay.
So Thursday,
Wednesday night.
Wednesday works. Adrian, you're the other one on this.
Yeah, what time were you thinking, Tracy, in that?
I don't know, anytime after 4:30.
Works for me.
Me too.
You guys are working harder than I am. I'm semi-retired, so the two of you tell me what time you like.
I'm
And the kids are invited, Adrian.
sure they'll be very helpful. Like 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one works best?
I think 7, if that's okay.
Okay. 7 on Wednesday.
Was that the 12th?
That's the 12th.
Okay, so any comments on the survey should be to Tracy by Monday, right?
Yes.
Should we tentatively plan to meet the following Wednesday, the 19th, just in case we need it? Same time?
Why don't we decide that on Wednesday, but we can put a hold on it. We won't formally use it, but I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
If that works for Adrian.
Yep.
Okay. Figure like about an hour each time?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And Marcia, we can host our own thing, so you don't have to hang around with us if you don't want to. You just get us started.
I'll definitely do the first meeting, but
Okay.
just, I mean.
Keep us out of trouble.
No, if we're talking about enhanced Zoom and some other things,
Oh, that's true.
I want to make sure that the right people are there. I can't commit something without their input.
Okay, all right. Great.
So I might have them join us later in the evening. I might develop the questions and have to get back to you. I'm not sure yet. I will check people's availability for next Wednesday evening.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee questions or comments on this? Feels like we're making sausage. Or for you vegetarians, tempura, whatever, I don't know what it is. So we have a next step, and I'd like to move to our next item, which would be, Marcia, do you want to go through your report? And then we'll talk about the next item.
My monthly update.
Monthly update, yes, thank you.
Yep. We've had 2A is done. 2B, we've got work to do over the winter where we resolve the bioretention basin issue. Still waiting for GPI to work with town engineering and with public works to make sure that everything is ready to go when construction resumes in the spring. Phase 2C, you've already been discussing Junction Park and what that will look like for the last half mile. We've posted the letter that we received from Mass Department of Transportation project manager Matt Eamon Kernan. He has provided their information that the 2 rail fence that was proposed and the decorative metal fence are not suitable or eligible and cannot be included. My read of that letter is that if we continue to show it in the plan, we delay the project. And so I have instructed the designer that he should remove it because I don't want to be the reason this is delayed further with regard to Sudbury. They're moving forward as quickly as they can. But also based on that letter, reduced the request to the Community Preservation Committee to take out the fencing, and as well as an additional project that I had envisioned, and requesting only $30,000 now from the CPC. That puts them, and the reason I did that is because they have like $40,000 over in terms of requests for various projects, and so they're debating the last $40,000. And I felt, given my department submitted 6 different projects, they are funding most of them, if not fully, then significantly. So reducing one felt like the right thing to do to make their life a little easier. And then the phase 2D, the information about the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs issued their MEPA certificate, so they're moving forward. An environmental impact report was not required. That's a good thing. Some of you may have noticed for the Community Connections grant that the bike shelters and bike racks were not installed by December 31st. And I was I know that Public Works tried really, really hard in the last month of December to get it in place, but we ran into issues where a building permit was required because of wind load and snow load on a roof. Didn't realize that. So we needed a stamp drawing. I needed to get the stamp drawing. The building department was willing to accept a comparable stamp drawing from Cambridge. Cambridge had a slightly different design. Public Works took the Cambridge design and started putting the foundations and footings in. It turned out it was the wrong design. And so December 27th, they said, we're not going to make it. And I reached out right away to the state, and they said, we'll put a letter together. We'll submit it to Federal Highway. That happened really quickly, and the extension was accepted to the end of May of 2022. So we will be reimbursed for the cost of the shelter and the bike racks. Thank goodness. So I'm very happy about that. And I have a commitment from Public Works that they will get it in and they will do it right. So that's there. And then the Concord Prison Cemetery project, GPI has provided an estimate for the survey and design work that I thought was a little high. It was for $14,600. And I had further follow-up conversation when they explained that they don't have all the, what we want is an ADA accessible path. They said, we don't have all of the locations of large trees, and there's a huge, beautiful oak tree at the base of the cemetery right near the trail that we want to move around and bring people in and under. So getting the survey crew out there and surveying the markers for the cemetery, we need that on the map as well. So I understood why they needed additional survey work. And they said the estimate is high because we know Concord likes detail and likes to make revisions. So if we can keep this focused and in line, it will probably come in for a lower amount. And then we'll be working with the Department of Corrections to implement the, I guess, some tree trimming, some invasives removal, and then coordinating with Department of Corrections to see who will be responsible for getting the path actually constructed. And the equipment purchased will probably be done by the town of Concord through the community preservation funds. So that's a project that will be going on. And I've also heard from Concord Prison Outreach that there may be some additional funding available from that group. They've done research on the prison cemetery itself. They have a lot of they have quite a group behind them, and there may be some additional funding. So that would be wonderful as well. So that's my update. I know that there were some questions about I don't know if there's questions unrelated to the last half mile, but if we wanted to take those first and then go to the last
Let's
half
do the
mile.
last half mile. So committee questions on last half mile, Richard.
Yeah, on the cemetery project, I did speak to Patricia Ruiz, who was the person who brought this to our attention. She and I are having a follow-up conversation this weekend about private funding. She felt confident that there could be some significant contribution from some private donors. So, we don't know any hard numbers at this point, but I'll report back after I talk to her this weekend again.
Okay.
Okay. So the letter from the state, from the Mass DOT, just in summary, basically said fencing is only appropriate for safety purposes, and that's it. And that's what that's their position. Okay.
Matt, I'm sorry. I did create a Google map and tried to highlight where the fencing would appear. And then I also downloaded the 75% design plans to highlight where fencing would occur, if that's something that would be valuable for the committee.
Is it? Yeah, you want to show it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know what people might want to see, that's all.
Okay, that'd be helpful just to have a visual.
Okay.
Marcia, while you're pulling that up, can you also help clarify for me? I thought originally the CPC funding was like a safeguard in case the town, in case the state decided not to approve the fencing. But I see that the state's not approving the fencing and the CPC request was lowered. So does that essentially mean there's no plan to put the fencing up along that trail or along that portion of the trail? Or is this where we discussed maybe applying for CPC money like the following year based on the timing of when installation would be done?
The letter from the state clearly indicated that they would not entertain any fencing on their land.
So it wasn't a matter of funding, if they wouldn't
Right.
allow fencing there, period.
Right, except for safety purposes. So what I'm showing here is the Google map. The white is white out. I apologize, I didn't have anything else, and my whiteout wasn't working, so I used tape. So, but the area along White Pond, where you have the steep drop off, and it is a next to the land owned by the Stone Root Lane up to the White Ave access point, as well as the small piece to the north that is overlooking the vernal pool area. Those are the two locations where Mass DOT said there are safety issues. We need fencing in this location. So this is where the fencing will be located. And it will be the 3-rail wooden fence that you will see in other locations north of Powder Mill Road.
Okay. So it's not a funding issue, it's a use of the property issue.
The state will not put fencing on their property for the benefit of private owners.
Got it. Okay. Any
And
other?
I was just going to go back, I guess, to where Adrian was going. We had the walkthrough. I think some of the public is even on today's call. Where does that leave the members that were pretty concerned and wanted to have fencing? is that the end of the road for them, or,
Well, what the state clearly states is that property owners can put fencing on their property. So if there are continuing concerns about trespass or access, then the owners who can put it along their property line, but the state is not going to put fencing that benefits private property owners on state-owned land. This is a public resource, and they don't condone that.
that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to open this up to any members of the public who have questions on this. I know this has been a hot topic. Does anybody else want to raise a question? Steve, right? I assume you went visual because you want to talk. Please, name and address, please.
Sure. Steve Wright, 137 Stone Root Lane. As you all can imagine, this is pretty disappointing after the amount of time and energy that the folks in my neighborhood put into this, and of course that you all put into this. And I was appreciative of all the efforts that you put into all this. This is the worst possible outcome from my perspective, in that not only is the state saying that they're not going to pay for fencing, but they're basically suggesting that they're going to prevent anyone from doing anything to make meaningful barriers in some of these spots. Just to remind everybody, and I know this is old news for everybody on the call. They've heard this before. This is important. This is important for a number of reasons. It's not just people wanting a fence in their backyard to prevent people coming into their backyards. It's also about protection of the pond and protection of the resource that we have at the pond, our little beach there, which, based on what it looks like we're falling on right now, means that there will be a path going through towards the pond and a very easy access right down through a private beach to the pond, almost a highway to the pond, if you will. And that's bad news for us as property owners here, but it's also bad news for anyone who has an interest in White Pond, its health, so on and so forth. I can't get outraged with the folks on the call, because obviously you've all weighed in, and we're kind of fighting the same enemy, if you will. It's maybe not enemy. That's might be a harsh way.
Battle. Yeah.
Yeah, you all know what I'm saying, but it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing, and rather than linger on that, I'd ask, what is it that we can do right now in a cooperative way to get somewhere on this? I'd love some direction if we have any. We've been doing a lot of advocacy on this, but any assistance that we could have from you all on what we could do as next steps would be welcome. And I'll leave it at that for the time being.
So I think one of the, I think this is an issue that now needs to move up to the state, and our legislatures may need to be the ones to be contacted. We can advocate, as this committee, as we have, to try to work with you guys to get things worked out. But that may be the next step, which is to take it up to the legislature and figure out how do you, how can you get things adjusted to, protect the pond. Other committee member thoughts? Or
that was what I was thinking, is there has to be some, I don't want to say the Supreme Court, but, whoever at the state said no, and this is why, and you can't, is there like another level?
It's the state, follows the federal highway. The funds come from federal highway, and the state follows the design criteria and design guidelines for Federal Highway Administration for rail trails. So that's the line in the stand that Mass DOT has drawn. Where I think what Nat is suggesting is if you reach out to the legislative delegation, I think it's Senator Barrett and Representative Tammy Gouveia, they can facilitate a conversation with Mass DOT that might talk through why it is so important or so valuable, why certain things might be reconsidered in terms of White Pond and the Stone Root Lane private beach there. So that might be the next step and as a possibility.
Okay,
Yeah, because it almost seems like this is not just a rail trail issue. There's three things. Number one, this isn't about funding anymore. This is like, okay, fine, you don't want to pay for it, but we want to do it. They said, no, you can't do that. So that's issue number one. And then issue number two is, who could you go to overrule them? But to me, issue number three potentially is, who can we talk to from an environmental perspective? Because everything that we learned on the walkthrough is that this could erode a very, very valuable ecosystem, so to speak. And so it's not even about a rail trail anymore. It's the rail trail is going to be through there. It's already there. We're going to increase traffic and inadvertently going to harm a habitat. So maybe there's another voice that can say, oh yeah, if you put the fence, you're going, here's what our surveys show or something.
Right. Just so we're on the same page too, is we as property owners on the west side, we might be able to put up fences on our own property, but we can literally do nothing on the beach property. That's restricted property. We can't put up things. We're not allowed to do basically anything. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my recollection, my read on it, that we have no recourse on that side.
Josh Galper, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Josh Galper, 65 Stone Root Lane. My comments are as co-chair of the White Pond Advisory Committee, to the effect of building anything on the protected land on the beachfront owned by the old Pickard Farm Trust too. I agree with Steve. I don't think we can put up anything there. May I comment about White Pond and its environmental state? So as you probably know, White Pond is in a very precarious situation. And we on the White Pond Advisory Committee have been really working very, very hard to turn things around. And we've actually made a lot of progress, both with the community and with the town. Some major actions occurred this past summer and will occur this coming summer in being able to remove cyanobacteria from the pond. We've been very concerned about increased traffic from the rail trail. We actually have put together a visitor management plan proposal. We're going to be discussing that on January 26th. I'll tell you that if there is no fencing, if there is basically public access from the trail to the pond, that's pretty much a disaster, and actually is unacceptable from our position on the White Pond Advisory Committee. We will go to battle. We will fight hard so that this does not happen. And to the earlier commenter about what is the science or what's the arguments to protect the White Pond habitat, we actually have this science. We put together a fairly extensive White Pond plan over the summer that's now published on the website. So we have the data. We've also been in touch with Senator Mike Barrett, who's quite supportive of the protection of White Pond and who's intervened on our behalf with the state Mass Fish and Game Department in the stocking of trout. That's an ongoing conversation, but we are engaged there. So I get the point that the state won't build a fence for the benefit of private landowners. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate that the state won't let anyone else build a fence there. But I got to let you folks know that it's not okay for White Pond that there be access. So there's got to be something else that happens.
Well, there is a 3-rail fence that's proposed. It may not be the full length of what was being requested, but there is a pretty extensive fence that will appear there, and there will be the interpretive panel and signage that indicates that this is private property. There is already an existing path that does take people over to the town's White Pond land, but so
there's a couple different things here. One is the ability for people to be on the trail and go right to White Pond. So that's one thing. Our concern on the White Pond Advisory Committee is the number of people who are going to do that. If the 3-rail fence goes far enough to make it pretty clear, look, don't walk here, then we may achieve the objectives that we're looking for. But in my understanding, Marcia, of your map, that three-tier fence would not prevent people from walking onto the land. We understand, of course, also that people can walk further down the trail, and there's another access, I believe that's trustee land. But the harder it is, basically, the harder it is for people to get to White Pond, the better from the perspective of the health of the pond. It's not clear to me also from the map that I just saw, and also the many previous conversations that have occurred, quite how folks are prevented from getting to the pond.
So I think Josh, I appreciate the standpoint. I think the committee as a whole is very aware of the issues around the pond and our both our personal feelings about protecting that asset. I think the upshot of the letter is that the path forward, I think, is continue, the conversations with our legislatures and whatever we can do from our perspective to provide support. We'd like to do that because we recognize the challenges. I think what's important is we're getting some clarity now. I felt that there was some ambiguity about what was possible and what wasn't. I think we now have a clear definition of where things stand and a direction to potentially move forward. So we'd like to continue to be part of this conversation where our charge and our help can be useful.
Well, that'd be great. Thank you. And I think what you can expect from us is that after we have our meeting on January 26th, we'll come to Marcia and ask for as many specifics as we can about really where is this fence? Yep. What path access is still available? And how can we diminish it to the point that people walking on the trail really don't want to go to White Pond when they're on the trail? Take a look. It's beautiful, but keep walking.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Because I'm cognizant of the time. Barbara, you've raised your hand. And you're muted. And I don't know if you want to speak, Barbara, but you are muted.
I'm doing it.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to get my camera going here. All right, forget that. All right. So, Marcia, you've a couple times mentioned this bioretention something for phase 2B. Could you clarify what that is and where and what the problem is?
No, I can't. It is an issue between engineering and natural resources. Bioretention is stormwater, and what are you doing? How are you managing and improving the stormwater that you're directing into an area? They ran into an area where there was ledge. Delia is questioning the extent of the ledge and wanting additional information to support their alternative that will impact wetlands further. So that's the conversation that's going on, and I've really left it up to the experts.
Is it near the bridge? Is that where the location is?
I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. We'll try and get more information.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is 2022. I just briefly want to mention to the committee that there is each of us has liaison roles that we take up. There is a list of those assignments that we had up to this point. I will send it out to the committee members. I'd ask you review them and see if you're still okay. we have some openings, I think, for other work that the committee can do in 2022. In 2022, we have some big things on our plate. Junction Park, obviously, continuing to work with the folks in the last half mile. We have the bridge opening, which I think next meeting, Richard, you will have some stuff you want to present. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah.
We have our e-bike policy work that Debbie's been working on. We need to do trail counts again. We have the middle school connection to the Bruce Freeman. We have questions around safety signals at the crossing, and there's some other one meeting with the other towns. What I'm interested in is hoping that some of you will kind of take up some of these topics and say, yeah, I'd like to lead the charge on it, much like Tracy did with the survey and that Debbie did with the e-bike. So rather than take up time now, I was going to just send a list out to the committee and have you guys look at it, see if there are things that you want to say. Yeah, I'd like to kind of honcho this through the 2022 period. Does that sound okay? Richard, go ahead.
I don't think the list had anything for the Transportation Advisory Committee, which has been reconstituted. I think it would be
good to have that on there. Okay.
To be keeping an eye on them.
I'll send you an incomplete list to which everyone can add, and also say I'm interested in this piece of work.
In terms of the bridge opening, that's we'll talk about it more next time. But if someone's particularly interested in that short-term project, I'd certainly be glad to have them work with me on that. Okay.
We might even end up with a subcommittee. Who knows?
I don't see the Disability Commission on that list either.
Oh, well, when I send the thing out, you'll see that you're on there.
I know. I see that I'm on the list of members, and that's my role. But in terms of the list of other committees,
the liaison,
I thought this was a comprehensive list. Maybe not. No.
It's probably my fault because I inferred that you are a liaison to the Disabilities Committee. But we can talk about that.
Okay.
I'll make sure it's on there. I'll make sure it's on there.
Yep.
Mr. Delpy, go ahead. You raised your hand.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the White Pond Advisory Committee does not have a liaison from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, and we'd be happy to have one.
I'm on the West Concord, sorry. I'm Ann Sussman, 534 Old Lumber Road, and we just nominated an advisory committee person. And I'm taking their role today. And next week,
great.
Next month, it'll be someone else.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And I'll email the chair the name of the person when I remember it.
Okay. And we actually have someone, I'll pull it, it'll be on the list. I think we had someone who was looking at, but we'll make sure the White Pond Committee is on there. The last item is around officers and elections. And your co-chairs, Richard and myself, were elected when we joined at the end of 2020 to be co-chairs. We have served longer than is usual, and it's not because we would like to be like, dictators on it. It's just that we've been working on things, and with the addition of 5 new members in the past year, we wanted to make sure that the committee was comfortable with us continuing to do the work. And I understand that elections are often held either at the end of the year or after town meeting. So I'd like to just open up, what is the committee's wishes with regard to co-chair, and when would you like to have us formally do elections again? Because we don't want to be dictators on this. Thoughts, comments?
Anybody want to be a co-chair?
Anybody want to take over now?
Just jump right in. I think that to me, next June, the next June or July meeting would be a natural time to revisit and then have a election campaign and the rest of it. Get your bumper stickers printed up, lawn signs, all that.
Like we talked about this. Was it in September or August? Is that what we decided, or did we just kick the can down till today?
I think we kicked the can
down the road, and I needed to be. I wanted to be more explicit about what the committee's wishes are, because
So
This
I mean, I
isn't-
think we need a motion of some sort that we, retain the current leadership role. And I mean, I think Adrian really is our clerk or secretary at this point as well. And we could have a nomination from not one of the three of us, that be the case until July, until our July meeting or something like that.
I'd like to make a motion to continue our leadership as currently positioned until June 30th, if the committee is amenable.
Second?
A second.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll do
so
a roll
moved.
call.
So how it works, okay.
Ms. Edelman?
Yes, agree.
I can't, I'm not
So you
supposed
can
to.
vote. You can vote for yourself.
Oh, I can't, okay. So
Yeah.
Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Okay, Mr. Follander,
Aye.
Ms. Hanson,
Approve.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Stearns.
Approve.
And Mr. Welch says yes. So
Barker.
move. So we will hold elections.
I think you left off. Did you get Mary Beth?
No,
Oh, Mary Beth, I'm sorry.
I approve.
My list is obviously not up to speed here. I apologize, Mary Beth.
And,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
apologize for my comment about the list because I didn't see the line that says, but without formal liaisons. And you're correct not to have the commission there. I saw that line after I made that comment.
Right, and you are the only, I think you're one of the few members in the charge who is actually specifically listed from a committee, so that's good.
Okay, well, that's what
Okay,
was
so-
confusing me.
So the motion was for June 30th, which means on our July meeting is when we'll have an election.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's great. Any other comments, questions, concerns of the committee members?
This is not a concern. I just attended the West Concord Advisory Committee meeting.
Yep.
And so I just took notes and maybe Tracy, if I can just send, or not, I sent them to you, so then you are allowed to send them to Tracy. It's just my raw notes, Tracy.
Or you can send them to Adrian directly if you wanted to. And she put them in the minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to make sure that Tracy reads them. And basically, they're just very happy that we're doing this. And then they had some, I think, very practical recommendations. So
Oh, good.
their
Okay.
their input's very important. So
Good, that's great. Okay, I just want to express my appreciation for everyone who's taken the time to serve. And I'm really excited about what's coming in 2022. I have a feeling it's going to be a messy journey on Junction Park, but I think we're going to get to some really interesting and helpful recommendations for the town. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you on doing that. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, good. Ms. Edelman,
I agree.
Ms. Boardman,
Agree.
Mr. Follander,
Yes.
Ms. Hanson,
Agree.
Ms. Miller,
Agree.
Mr. Stearns,
Agreed.
Mary Beth,
I agree.
and I agree also. The meeting is closed at 8:51 p.m. Adjourned. Thank you all.
Adjourned.